Shabbat Shalom. If you join us regularly on Shabbat or have participated in any of my weekday reflections and classes, you probably recognize the scene over my shoulder. It's the space I created here in my home to record videos and lead services. Each of our rabbis in Cantor has a similar space. By now you probably recognize the delicate orchid positioned over Rabbi Geffen's shoulder, much like the orchids that live in her office at NSCI. Cantor Goldstein's grand piano and the family portrait that hangs above it. The shelves in Rabbi Green's home study, lined with books and mementos, each with its own story. The two-frame photographs that hang there on my wall are from a small store in Jerusalem's Old City. It's nearby the restaurant where my wife Carly and I shared our first meal together when we met as first-year rabbinical students in Jerusalem. In recent months, our homes have become so much more than dwelling places. Due to the ongoing pandemic, for many of us, our homes are now where we work, attend school, and spend most of our time. Many of us have never before spent so much time at home. And I'd imagine, like me, you're also noticing the imperfections around the house. Being home more often, I'm noticing more scratches in the wood floors, patches of frayed carpet, screws that need tightening. The list goes on of areas that could use more of my attention. Those imperfections we would reposition the camera as not to show when participating in a Zoom class or video conference for work. I'm reminded of a story I heard from a colleague. It's about a man who gave up on life. He found no joy in his work, his family, his community. So we prayed to God to let him leave this world. Show me the way to paradise, he prayed. God asked him, "Are you sure that's what you want?" The man replied, "I'm sure with all of my heart." "Very well," replied God, showing him the way to paradise. It turns out it wasn't very far, just a few days' journey from his village. So late one afternoon, he set out on his way. He walked until nightfall, and then decided to rest beneath a green, leafy fruit tree. But just before he fell asleep, it occurred to him that in the morning, he might become confused and forget which was the way to paradise, and which was the way back to the village. So he left his shoes by the roadside, pointing in the way of his journey. This way in the morning, all he had to do was get up, jump in his shoes, and continue along the way. While things happen in life, shoes get turned around. Was it a gust of wind, an angel? Was it just a squirrel? Who knows? But his shoes got turned around. In the morning, the man rose, ate from the tree, and set about to continue on his journey, unaware that he was actually returning home. By late morning, he spotted a village on the hillside, and his heart leapt. "I've arrived! It's paradise!" the man shouted. And he ran down the valley and up the hill until he arrived at the gates of the town. Doesn't paradise look like my town, he thought. But my town was always so crowded, so noisy. This is different. He sat and he witnessed the town awakening. He heard the chatter of children on their way to school, and he watched as the adults hurried past on their way to work or to the market. And for the first time in his entire life, he felt the vitality, the energy, the love that filled the village. So he sat there in the square all day. As the day waned, he began to feel hungry. I wonder, he thought, since paradise looks so much like my town, if there is a street in paradise like my street. He went to look and found it just where he thought it might be. I wonder if there is a house in paradise like my house. There it was. Except what he saw before him was not his old house with its chipping paint and leaking toilet. Something was always wrong with that house. Sure, the house he saw now was lived in, but it was worn down with footsteps of running children. What he saw was a house that looked well worn and well loved. Just as he was admiring the house, a woman came to the door. A woman who bore a striking resemblance to his wife. She called his name and told him to come in for dinner. His old wife was, well, old, a nag, always telling him what to do. The woman he saw before him looked no younger, but the man noticed a softness in her eyes and a warmth and love in her smile that he hadn't seen in who knows how long. They know me in paradise. There is a place set for me in paradise, he said. The house here in paradise was not like his house back in the village. That house was always crowded, congested, filled with commotion. This place was cozy, homey, and filled with life. He sat and he ate the best meal he had ever eaten. And afterwards, he went upstairs for the deepest, most restful sleep he has ever known. The next morning, the woman who looked like his wife handed him his tools and lunchbox and sent him on his way to work. Work? But of course, even in paradise, there's work. But this work was different. It was filled with more wonder, more purpose, more joy, and more life than the day before. Do you know that the old fool never knew that he hadn't really made it to paradise? Because every day was filled with more wonder, more purpose, and more joy, and more life than the day before. That small corner in our home, at one time seldom used, is now transformed into my sacred workspace. The space in which I pray, teach, and connect with all of you. Just beyond the camera's view, our daughter Molly's toys are often strewn about, and papers and books pile up on the coffee table behind me. My home, too, is both well-worn and well-loved. The story about the man who shows paradise teaches anything. It's that we cannot ask God to shield us from life, imperfections and all, from stuff happening that we never planned to happen, events we never expected, or even squirrels. Those kinds of prayers will never be answered. Elul's theme is teshuvah, rerouting our hearts and our minds towards the correct direction. This Shabbat and the days of preparation leading up to the Jewish New Year, we should pray only that our shoes get turned around and point the way to the paradise right beneath our feet.